White people didn't invent slavery. In fact, they were the first to end it. Yet somehow, saying this is controversial. Watch what happens when someone says it out loud.
The reason there is no slavery in the world today, I mean, there's a lot of slavery in the world today, but in the parts of the world where there's no slavery, is because the British Empire ended it. That's why there is no slavery. That is...
So,
well,
that's going to prompt
look, the fact that you are uneducated about history doesn't mean it's funny. So let me educate you now. Let me educate you now. I know that the woke narrative and the anti-Western narrative on slavery... Well, you're not practicing free speech very well, are you? You're not practicing free speech very well, are you? The moment I say something you don't like, you're not practicing free speech very well, are you, sir?
Let's be clear. Slavery is evil, but it's an ancient human evil practiced by everyone to everyone. 4 years ago, I went to Ghana. I stood in a slave dungeon where people who looked like me sold people who looked like me to white people. But long before Europeans began the transatlantic slave trade, there was a trans-Saharan slave trade. For over 1,000 years, brown Arab slavers sold millions of black Africans across the Sahara. Then came the Barbary slave trade. In North Africa, Arab and African raiders captured and sold over 1 million white Christian Europeans. China, Korea, Japan, India, every one of them practiced slavery. Europeans did take slavery to another scale when they came to Africa. But it's not because they were more evil, it's because they had the technology to commit evil on an industrial scale. So, which major power stopped slavery first? The British, in large part because of pro-human Christian values. The same values America was founded on. The same values that drove white Americans to fight other white Americans to free black Americans in the Civil War. Values missing in places like Libya, where today you can buy a human being for $400. White people aren't better than anyone else, but they're also not worse. Yet, some black people are taught to hate white people, and many white people are taught to hate themselves. We keep pretending evil has a color, as if less melanin means less morality. That lie makes us ignore history and fuels racial hatred. Right now, much of that hatred is aimed at white people. But why should black or brown people care? Because hatred is a hot coal that we hold in our hand, waiting to throw at another. It burns them, but it burns us too. It turns every problem into white supremacy while defending black degeneracy. And when the pendulum swings back, white people react with hostility, and then they defend white degeneracy. The only way out of this is to stop making morality about the color of people. Because in our capacity for good and evil, we are all equals.
I came across this video by this wonderful black guy, and it generated in me the urge to talk about slavery and all the lies and misconceptions that follows it. I'm a bona fide African, born and raised in Africa, so I think my account on slavery, especially from an African perspective, matters a lot. Now, you've probably heard before that white people invented slavery. Of course you've heard, okay? Because this narrative is being repeated on social media, in college classrooms, and even in pop culture, okay? It's being repeated everywhere. But what if I told you that that is not only historically false, but it is also dangerously misleading? Now, this video is not an attempt at making excuses for anyone, but it is a way of discussing this issue on a fuller, more honest historical view. Because here is the deal. White people did not invent slavery, but they ended it on a global scale. And I'm saying this as a bona fide African, okay? A bona fide African person who gives priority to facts over emotional grievances. Yes, slavery was horrific, okay? And no one should ever justify it. But if we are going to talk about slavery, then let us talk about all of it. The full, uncomfortable global truth. Slavery has existed for thousands of years in every corner of the world, okay? In ancient Egypt, slaves helped build the pyramids. In Greece and Rome, entire economies ran on slave labor. The Chinese Empire used forced labor for massive infrastructure projects. The Ottoman Empire enslaved Europeans, Africans, and individuals from within its own territory. The Aztecs and the Mayans enslaved neighboring tribes. The Berbers, which refers to the pirates and slave traders from the coastal region of North Africa, specifically the Maghreb, that is the Moroccans, Algerians, Tunisians, and Tripolians, okay? They enslaved white people, Europeans. The Native Americans enslaved each other, as well as other neighboring tribes, okay? Everybody did it. Every race, every tribe. The brutal truth is that slavery was humanity's original sin, not Europe's. Now let's talk about Africa, because this is where the narrative often gets uncomfortable for some of us. Long before Europeans arrived Africa, okay, African societies were already enslaving each other. The kingdom of Dahomey in Benin, they built wealth by raiding villages and selling captives into slavery. The Ashanti region in Ghana, same thing. Slavery was a status symbol, a business, and a cultural norm. We're not just talking about domestic servitude, guys. We're talking about full-on human trafficking, okay? Long before the first Europeans set foot on African soil, Africans sold Africans into slavery. The transatlantic slave trade would not have been possible without African complicity. European traders didn't just march into the jungle and snatch people away. African leaders, kings, chiefs, and merchants captured and sold their own people, sometimes prisoners of war, other times innocent civilians that were captured by these kings and other leaders. Historian Henry Louis Gates Jr., a black scholar by the way, put it this way, okay? He put it very concisely. He said, without complex business partnerships between African elites and European traders, the Atlantic slave trade would have been impossible. Black Africans captured, packaged, and sold other black Africans to white traders. That is a historical fact, okay? I'm sure you guys have heard of Mansa Musa of Mali, one of the richest men of the 14th century. But are you aware of how he greatly enriched himself, okay? Of how he was greatly enriched by slavery, buying and selling of fellow Africans. I'm sure you are not aware of this because this truth doesn't fit the usual narrative. Here's what's rarely acknowledged. White Europeans were the first to abolish slavery, yeah. Britain banned the slave trade in 1807. The Royal Navy actually patrolled the African coast to stop slave ships. William Wilberforce, a white Christian male, conservative man, fought for decades to outlaw slavery in the British Empire. In America, over 600,000 people died in the Civil War, majority of whom were white men fighting to end slavery. But while white men were dying and giving their lives for slavery to be abolished, something interesting was happening in Africa, okay? Other Africans, kings, tribal leaders, warriors were fighting to keep slavery alive. They were giving their lives to keep their fellow Africans enslaved and in bondage. Isn't that interesting? The king of Dahomey, yes, black royalty, were among those who resisted and refused to stop selling slaves, okay? He literally told British envoys that ending the slave trade would destroy his economy. According to records from 1849, Dahomey's king said this: "The slave trade is the ruling principle of my people. It is the source and glory of their wealth. The mother lures the child to sleep with notes of triumph over an enemy reduced to slavery." Different powerful figures in different African nations refused to end slavery because they were profiting off of it. In my country, Nigeria, the British had to come back with ammunition and weapons and launch a full-blown fight against us for our leaders to surrender and end slavery on Nigerian soil. Now, let that sink in. While the British were using their military to shut down slave ships, some African kingdoms were begging them to let it continue. Also, I have a question for us. Did any African empire or individual ever build ships, form expeditions, or wage wars to bring back the millions of men, women, and children shipped across the Atlantic? No, not once, not ever, not even a single expedition, not a single boat built. Also, they didn't try to rescue the descendants of the enslaved. They moved on. Why? Because they profited off of it. Their wealth, their status, their power was all built on slave trade. Also, if we are serious about truth, okay, we can't stop with Africa. The Arab slave trade lasted longer, reached further, and was often more brutal. From the 7th century until the early 20th century, Arab traders enslaved black Africans, primarily men, castrated them, and sold them throughout the Middle East, India, and even the Ottoman Empire. In fact, many historians estimate that over 17 million Africans were enslaved by Arab Muslims, far more than the 12 million transported in the transatlantic slave trade. And yet, where is the outrage? Where are the demands for reparations? Where is the demonization of Arab Muslims the way we see for white Europeans? It is all silent, always silent, because the narrative has been rigged to blame one group, ignoring the rest. So why is it that only white people get blamed for slavery today? Why are children in Western schools being taught that white equals oppressor and black equals victim, while history tells a much more complicated and shared story? Today's anti-white rhetoric isn't justice. It is revenge wrapped in identity politics, and it is also poison. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't teach slavery. We absolutely should, but we should teach all of it. All of it. Not a version that keeps black people trapped in a cycle of blame and helplessness, nor a version that presents Africans and Arabs as innocent victims and Europeans as demons. You cannot build a future when you are obsessed with victimhood. You cannot take responsibility for your life while blaming people who look nothing like the little minority of those who wronged your ancestors almost 400 years ago. We all deserve better than the lies we were told. We deserve better than victim narratives that strip us of our dignity. Yes, as an African, my ancestors were enslaved, okay? Some were brutalized, but others were part of the problem, part of the evil system. And recognizing that doesn't make me self-hating. It makes me truth-loving. Our greatness isn't found in pretending we were perfect victims, okay? No, it is found in learning from all of it. The good, the bad, and the ugly, and rising above it all. Slavery was a global horror, enabled by kings and conquerors of every race, every single race on earth. But only one group is still forced to carry the guilt. Why? Now, why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because I'm tired of the lazy narrative. The one that says that all white people are guilty by default. The one that teaches young black kids that they are permanent victims. I'm tired of it all, okay? If we want healing, it should start with telling the truth. And if we want unity, we must stop weaponizing history to shame people today for sins of the past that only a minuscule of them, a minuscule of their ancestors committed. The transatlantic slave trade ended because Western civilization chose to end it. And that, despite all the darkness, is a legacy that is also worth remembering. But as always, guys, these are my thoughts, these are my opinions. Please feel free to share yours in the comment section below, but do so respectfully. Also, if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, honestly, I don't know what you're waiting for. Subscribe to the channel. Like and share this video to keep people informed, and consider joining my membership or supporting the channel in any way that you can. Also, consider joining my X account and also my Rumble page. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to catch you on the next one. For now, peace.